My favorite example is the family that invented Legos, Danish family. It's called Kirkby.
Oh, yeah.
It's a family office with, holy shit, 166 billion as of 2022. You probably have a better number than the Wikipedia plug for FINTRX here, than the Wikipedia number I'm sourcing right now live.
We do. They're definitely in our product. I've seen them. But yeah, if you really want to nerd out,
Yeah, please.
get you access to the product at some point. But when you get into our product and you can just kind of go in and say, find me, single family offices over, 5 billion in assets that created their wealth in, pick the random industry, and then you start to read the intel and the profiles on each of these single families, and it's just like so eye-opening of the sheer scale of wealth that can be created in all of these random
Waste management
businesses. Yeah, waste management, right. It's like, Joe Blow sold his kid candy business for $2 billion back in 1998. It's like, what?
Is this thing on?
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Welcome back to the Run the Numbers podcast, where apparently my barber thought I should look like a state trooper this month. Today, we're diving into the hidden plumbing of the financial world, the data pipes powering the people behind the money. We're joined by Russ D'Argento, CEO and founder of FINTRX, a data-as-a-service platform that helps financial pros map the famously foggy landscape of family offices. We know there's a ton of money in these family offices, the likes of Michael Dell's, Jeff Bezos, the family that invented Legos. That was one of my favorite ones. If that sentence had you Googling half the words, though, about family offices, don't worry, you're in the right place. Russ is here to demystify it all, and more importantly, give us a masterclass in building a vertical data business that works. DaaS, data as a service, baby. We'll get into how FINTRX was born. Was it divine inspiration or just, I'm tired of this nonsense kind of thing? We'll unpack what makes DaaS different from your garden variety SaaS startup. Spoiler, it's messier, a lot messier, deeper, and might involve actual humans doing real research. We'll explore the fine art of workflow integration, the pros and pitfalls of owning your own data, and why building a business for a niche market like family offices might be the smartest complicated thing you could do. And yes, we're going to answer the million-dollar question. What is a family office, and why does it sound like the most elite secret Illuminati society in finance? All that plus a lightning round where Ross shares what he wishes someone told him before starting a data-as-a-service company, the tools he swears by, and one memorable misstep that taught him more than 1,000 dashboards ever could. Let's go. Hey, metrics fans, let me ask you something. Do you know what keeps CFOs and finance teams up at night? Well, it's not the complex analyses or forecasting models. It's the mind-numbing tasks of chasing receipts, reconciling expenses, and juggling 5 different systems just to track company spending. I was talking with a finance leader last week who calculated her team was spending an astonishing 20 hours weekly just on expense administration. That's nearly 1,000 hours annually on low-value tasks. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Rippling Spend. Rippling Spend is the only platform that automatically handles your entire company's spending in one unified system. What makes it different? It's built on Rippling's workforce platform. So when org changes happen, like someone getting promoted or changing departments, all approval workflows, access permissions, and policies update automatically. Picture this. When your marketing director goes on vacation, expense approvals don't sit in their inbox waiting for their return. Instead, they're automatically routed to the right backup approver. No manual delegation needed. Meanwhile, your finance team gets real-time visibility into all company spending with no more month-end surprises. As a Run the Numbers listener, you can get an exclusive demo showing exactly how much time your org would save. Just visit rippling.com/metrics to learn more. That's rippling.com/metrics. Do it, guys. Trust isn't earned, it's demanded. Whether you're a startup founder navigating your first audit or a seasoned security professional scaling your GRC program, proving your commitment to security has never been more critical or complex. That's where Vanta comes in. Businesses use Vanta to establish trust by automating compliance needs across over 35 frameworks, like SOC 2 and ISO 27001. Centralized security workflows, complete questionnaires up to 5 times faster, and proactively manage vendor risk. Vanta not only saves you time, it can also save you money. A new IDC white paper found that Vanta customers achieve $535,000 per year in benefits, and the platform pays for itself in just 3 months. Join over 9,000 global companies like Atlassian, Cora, and Factory, who use Vanta to manage risk and improve security in real time. For a limited time, our audience gets $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/metrics. That's vanta.com/metrics for $1,000 off. Here's a question. When was the last time you really had time to focus on growth and not chasing contract renewals, tracking shadow IT spend, or explaining rising software costs to the board? Yikes. The truth is, traditional spend management is broken. If you're still piecing together data from 5 different systems just to figure out what you're actually spending, while vendors keep on pushing those auto renewals and price hikes, my friend, I got a solution for you. That's where Tropic comes in. Tropic is an intelligent spend management solution that consolidates your spend data and processes into one unified offering, enabling insights and decisive action. It doesn't just show you where the problems are, it helps you solve them. From spotting hidden optimization opportunities like duplicative spend, to automating those painful procurement workflows, to giving you the best market data that turns every vendor negotiation in your favor. Tropic combines smart insights with real human expertise to keep you ahead of the curve. And I can say firsthand because I've used them for over 2 years. Their SaaS platform helps me with price checks. It helps me keep my calendar organized of when renewals are coming up and I can actually visualize it. And let me say, it saves me more than 10 hours a week on vendor management, and we've saved a ton on renewals. I'm walking into the boardroom with a lot more confidence. Isn't it time to turn your spend management into your competitive advantage? Visit tropicapp.io/mostlymetrics. That's tropicapp.io/mostlymetrics. Russ, thanks for joining me on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but you are about to put on a masterclass in all things data as a service businesses. And while we're at it, demystify the family office space.
I'm here for it.
Because my only comp for it in my head is when Bobby Axelrod in Billions gets in trouble and can't take any more money externally. Stupid question. What is a family office?
Family office is a pool of wealth or capital, either with a single person or family, single family office, or with multiple people or multiple families that have basically, rolled up and pooled their assets together to piggyback on some infrastructure, right? So in its simplest form, think of a single family office as an ultra high net worth individual who maybe had we'll use a modern example, like a tech exit, sold their company for, $500 million. They need to manage that wealth somehow, right? They need to compound it for themselves, their family, their kids, kids, so on and so forth. Clearly, there's a lot of complexity and a lot of shit that comes with that, right? It might be, oftentimes in our world, we talk about it in regards to the investment aspect and how to compound that wealth and preserve it. But there's all kinds of complexities that come with that type of wealth, right? It might be legal, it might be accounting, it might be real estate, it might be, estate planning, right? All of these things. So in a single family office, you'd go out and hire folks to manage each of those affairs for you or for your family. And in a multifamily office, it might be 5, 10, 50, whatever, 100 families that pool their assets together, and then they piggyback on that infrastructure because it's a little bit more cost effective and you get some scale and some leverage behind that. So in its very basic, simplest form, that is what a family office is. And I guess the second layer of why it's attractive to our world, whether you're a hedge fund manager, private equity firm, a venture fund, real estate fund, whatever, is they allocate capital, right? Their job is to compound and preserve and grow assets. And so how do you do that? You invest it and grow it over time, right? And then additionally, typically a family office has less red tape than you would find with a standard large institution, whether it's very consultant driven and there's, very specific mandates that need to be met before somebody can, make an investment, make an allocation. They can't be overweighted in a specific, sector. They have to have a specific track record, specific AUM amount before they can, make an investment. Where a family office is very different. They might have, they might be able to take some more chances. They might be able to invest in, emerging managers that are small, where maybe a public pension plan, that doesn't make sense for them to take that kind of risk, even if there's, asymmetric, potential returns there. So that is essentially what they are in its simplest form and why the market cares about them. And it's a very fast growing asset class. It's the fastest growing, certainly. And, you hear about this wealth transfer that's taking place, and so much of that is going to end up in the hands of single and multifamily office new creation and multifamily offices that are already created today.
What's the minimum level of wealth someone would typically need to establish a family office?
I would say if you ask that question to 10 people, you will get 10 different answers. So that's the disclaimer. We view it on the very, very low end of 100 million, but really it becomes much more viable to 250 million, something like that. I mean, it's an expensive endeavor to run if you want to do it right. But I would say that is probably the range of kind of when it becomes real. Now, you have a whole consortium of 25, 40, 50, $75 million groups, individuals, where technically it might be one or two people and a third party that does accounting and a third party that handles external investment managers for them. Is that a family office? Kind of, I would say so. But in its truest form, you think larger, chunkier pools of capital. Not that 75 million is not a lot, but when you look at it in context, it's on the much, much smaller side.
I got to get a couple more sponsors for this podcast. Okay.
Fair enough.
So you got to be liquid at least 100 million to start one of these. That's big money. You realize like there are different games to be played, like even with certain wealth managers, like you got to have 20 million or more. And then like you kind of work up the ladder to become a family office. And what I find so fascinating about family offices is I'm a geek for like the private market stuff. And there are a lot of pre-IPO companies that have taken a bunch of money from family offices over the last 5 years.
Yeah, totally. The direct investment stuff is becoming really interesting. Family offices are making a lot more private investments, doing direct deals, competing a lot with.
Yeah, competing.
But not just on the deals. They're competing for talent.
Say more about that.
Yeah, they're competing for talent from the PE firms and the VC firms. I mean, it's like a super attractive place to grow your career, right? Like just as like there's less quote red tape, maybe on the investment side, it's a little bit different than going to work at a really large sponsor, right? It's probably a better lifestyle. It's an interesting way. It's a little bit more bespoke than the 1,200 person large PE shop, right? So they're really competing for talent. They have the dollars to pay them well, and if if a family office says, "Hey, look, we've been in the public markets solely and real asset markets solely for the past 15 years, we want to start to enter the private markets." I would say typically there's almost nobody ever at those firms who knows what the hell they're doing and how to do that. How do you vet deals and, what are you looking for? And hey, like, what types of companies do we want to be in? Early stage, late stage? Like, how do you evaluate that? Right. And so where would be the most viable place to go to find that talent? To firms that's all they do all day long, PEVC, right? So that is where that kind of talent war is coming in. And, like I said before, there's the growth in the family office market is huge, but not just on the newly launched single family offices, but also on the multifamily office market as well. I mean, there's a lot of M&A activity. I mean, Pastone, for example, is one of the best multifamily offices out there. We have a close business relationship there. A gentleman by the name of Eddie Brown, who came from Schwab, just brought on to Pastone as their chief growth officer. Now, here's someone who's really well established, incredibly well respected guy, has been around the business for quite some time, grown his career at Fidelity and Schwab, right? And he leaves and goes to a multifamily office of Pastone. So I think that just tells you a little bit about where the market is today versus where it might have been like 10 years ago. I just don't think you saw moves like that. And so props to Eddie, but I think it's really exciting to be in that, to be in this world.
Didn't Iconics Capital start out as a family office for Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg and a couple others?
Yeah, they do run their capital. That's right. And so, that's a good example. And another good example, they do a ton of privates, right? So they're in a ton of private companies and they're in all different asset classes. But, That's technically a multifamily office. They're registered as an RIA as well, just due to the size. But yeah, super, super exciting ecosystem right now.
Can you rattle off a couple of the biggest family offices out there?
I mean, name the Billionaire and they're out there.
Like Jeff Bezos has one, right?
He does. Yep. Certainly. I think it's Expedition. You got Bill Gates, right? Cascade, Michael Dell, MSD, they're very, very common, very, very common for that ilk of wealth, right? Like Gates is over 100 billion, I think. And, what makes them interesting too is you often see with these common ones, but also, just kind of standard single family office that, are active in the privates, like you mentioned. That's a really interesting model for someone who, I don't know, made their wealth in fintech, exits their business, 750 in assets, they're compounding capital. They want to get back into the private space as an investor now. What better place for them to add value than to, deploy capital into private companies back in the fintech space? They've been there. They've done it. They can add a ton of value. They can take a board seat. They can be influential. Typically, they have smaller portfolio counts, family offices, than like a large PE fund, right? They have a huge portfolio. Family offices typically have less, so they can give them more attention. The model makes sense to me. And as the assets continue to transfer into that world, I mean, you're going to see more and more of this, which is why, not just us, right? Like hopefully everybody uses us, but there's a need for access to family offices, investment advisors, et cetera, because that's where the money is flowing.
My favorite example is the family that invented Legos, Danish family. I think it's called Kirkby. It's a family office with holy shit, 166 billion as of 2022. You probably have a better number than the Wikipedia plug for FINTRX here than the Wikipedia number I'm sourcing right now live.
We do. They're definitely in our product. I've seen them. But yeah, you want to actually, if you really want to nerd out,
please
get you access to the product at some point. But when you get into our product and you can just kind of go in and say, like find me, you can just type it in and, whatever natural language with the AI if you don't want to use the filters, but you could be like, find me, single family offices over, 5 billion in assets that created their wealth in, sports and entertainment or, food and beverage, whatever. You pick the random industry and then you start to read the intel and the profiles on each of these single families. And it's just like so eye-opening of the sheer like scale of wealth that can be created in all of these random, like off the beaten path
waste management
businesses. Yeah, waste management, right. It's like, Joe Blow sold his kid candy business for $2 billion back in 1998. It's like, what? Like it's actually really interesting and inspiring to read.
It is
the wealth creation stories of these single families.
I originally went down the family office rabbit hole because I'm in Naples, Florida right now, and Michael Dell's family office bought a harbor like 3 miles from me.
Interesting when you're buying up actual harbors. Yeah, that's cool. And by the way, shout out to you for being in Naples when I freezing my face off here in Boston.
Sorry to do that. Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. What does the future hold for business? Ask 9 experts and you'll get 10 answers. Bull market, bear market, rates will rise, rates will fall. Can someone please just invent a crystal ball already? Until then, over 40,000 businesses have future-proofed their companies with NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 cloud ERP, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, HR into one fluid platform. With one unified business management suite, there's one source of truth, giving you the visibility and control you need to make quick decisions. With real-time insights and forecasting, you're peering into the future with actionable data. Whether you're closing the books in days, not weeks, you're spending less time looking backwards and more time on what's next. If you listen to this podcast, you'll know I ask CFOs all the time to rep their tech stacks, and I would say almost every one of them use NetSuite. And that's what I would use too. Whether you're a company earning millions or even hundreds of millions, NetSuite helps you respond to immediate challenges and seize your biggest opportunities. Speaking of opportunity, download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning at netsuite.com/metrics. The guide is free to you. That is netsuite.com/metrics. Ooh, yeah, it's netsuite.com/metrics. Please, guys, I really need this. Ready to plan confidently, close faster, and report with accuracy? Here's what sets Planful apart. Imagine purpose-built solutions for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR, all with built-in financial intelligence. It's easy to implement Planful in just weeks with minimal IT involvement, enabling seamless collaboration across your organization's key financial workflows. Best of all, Planful grows with you. Its unmatched scalability ensures that no matter how fast your business expands, Planful can keep up. See why over 1,500 customers worldwide choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Visit planful.com/metrics to see how you can elevate your team this year with Planful. They will hook you up. It is planful.com/metrics. Tell me, boy, CJ sent you. Planful.com/metrics. I got a question for you. Is your billing system slowing you down? For most B2B SaaS companies, it's like a total mess. Manual invoices, revenue tracking workarounds, and endless spreadsheets that drain time and create errors. I've seen some ugly spreadsheets in my day. Your billing shouldn't feel like a never-ending math problem. That's where Subscript comes in, the modern billing and revenue recognition platform designed for SaaS finance teams that need both flexibility and accuracy. From automated invoicing and dunning to compliant, transparent revenue recognition and real-time analytics, Subscript eliminates manual work, reduces errors, and gives you a single source of truth for all your financial data. Finance teams using Subscript save over 20 hours a month. Wow. Closing the books faster and making smarter decisions with confidence. Don't let billing hold you back. Start scaling with ease. Learn more and book a free demo today at subscript.com. That's subscript.com. Tell me, boy, CJ sent you. They'll hook you up. I want to get warmed up with the founding story of FINTRX because it's kind of the backbone to this discussion, and I want to understand the workflows that you've been able to win in the data space you play in. What inspired you to launch FINTRX? Was it a light bulb moment, or did it grow out of a frustration that you saw in the industry?
Yeah, it wasn't so much a light bulb moment as it was just a realization that the industry was operating in what I felt was somewhat of the dark ages, right? It just felt behind other products I was using, whether it was, in other aspects of work or really things I was using outside of work. And, I was working in alternative investments at the time, raising money in the hedge fund space. And, I kept hitting the same wall over and over and over again, that there was just really no reliable way to source good quality private wealth data at the time. Family offices were really the focus point. And obviously it's expanded into the investment advisor space, which we can talk about in a bit. But it was a lot of spreadsheets and really static column and row based data. And so the catalyst was when I really started to understand how important this data set was, how important it was for me. And if it was important for me, I was just one individual in a huge ecosystem that, I felt could really value from a better way to access that private wealth data. And so, there were some tailwinds there. Certainly it's a massive, massive growing market, literally trillions of investable assets to go get. And so, that was really the genesis of seeing the opportunity. And it was a pain point I was feeling every single day, and, felt there had to be a better way. So I left and started FINTRX, maybe foolishly, but, it's worked out great so far, and it's been an amazing journey.
So I recently came from a company that was a marketplace, but it was truly like a data business at its core. And I remember my boss saying, like, I was dumb enough to start this business when I didn't know enough. He's like, if I had to do it over again and I knew the pains of creating a data business, I don't know if I could stomach it.
I could, say that would apply to any business, certainly data businesses, but any business, it's not for the faint of heart, but, if you approach it with no plan B attitude, it can be incredibly rewarding, but it is not easy. A lot of sleepless nights for sure.
So if you were at a cocktail party, let's say maybe you're even at a neighborhood cul-de-sac party with Andy Detweiler, who introduced us of Virtual Research, how would you describe FINTRX to someone who doesn't speak fluent finance or tech? What is it?
Andy would be a couple of drinks in, so I'd have to go slow, certainly. But someone who doesn't speak finance, I would say maybe you could describe it as like a navigational tool, like a GPS tool that, allows you to weave your way and navigate your way through a very complex set of information, right? And in our world, that complex set of information is private wealth information, data, intelligence, people, firms, anything that makes that space up. And, I'd explain to them that we built a platform that provides intelligence and guidance to those who are trying to either sell into that market or recruit from that market or fundraise from that market or distribute products, mutual funds, etc., ETFs. So it's a navigational tool to help you, meander your way through a very complex world. That's how I describe that to Andy.
Damn, that was good. I feel like there are other data as a service products that could just like do the control F, control replace on family office and use that. So props to you for that. And one more softball, because then we're going to go deep into data here. But
Sure.
How would you just explain the power of a data as a service business model to like a prospective customer? Because DaaS, or data as a service, it gets thrown around all the time. And people are like, wait, is this like subscription, but for data? Like, what is this?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I mean, I think of it as, the combination of a powerful data asset or data intelligence kind of fused with tech. It's very different than pure software, which is, just tech only. And it's very, very different than just kind of a pure data play. I view it as when you marry those two items. So you take kind of a tech-enabled approach to data and then deliver that data in a really unique and intelligent way. To me, that is what makes a really great data as a service business. It's the marrying of those two things. And for me, that was interesting. Like just a pure software play, like wasn't of high interest for me. And just a pure data only business would bore the hell out of me. So it fits well for what gives me energy.
So it sounds like it is in many ways different than like a standard SaaS model.
It is. It's different, but it's also, it's also similar in many ways, right? So when you think about the through line, right, the similarities, it's recurring revenue, it's platform based. So it's, delivered via a cloud-based interface, right? You still focus on providing value and driving the customer to productive outcomes for whatever that might be for their use case. So it is similar in that regard, the way it's delivered, but some of the differences are, first, there's a underlying data asset there that starts with the business. So, if you were to kind of compare it to a pure software play, let's say a CRM play, right? That's basically an empty box. With a DaaS business, you're starting with a data asset. So you need to build that asset. You need to acquire it, whatever mechanism you use to start. Some people license data. Some people kind of build it internally. It's really high barrier to entry, in my opinion, kind of that acquisition phase. And that's very different. And I think probably the biggest difference between a pure software play is you can't just throw better engineers at it or write more code, right? Like a true data, as a service business is a hybrid of tech and data. And that just comes with a lot of complexity. And it's, in my opinion, very, very different than a pure SaaS business.
Like I just had the light bulb moment. Like Salesforce is an empty box when you get it. Asana is an empty box when you get it. Workday is an empty box that's also a very expensive empty box to rig up and get your data into it. For you, I mean, you have to show up to the party with something that's compelling in that box for them to get any value out of it.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And then on top of that, you have to have a compelling product, right? You have to deliver that data in a really intelligent way. It has to look and feel beautiful. It has to be a joy to use. So it has, all of the positives and that you'd find within a SaaS business, but you have this other piece of it, which is good and bad. There's pros and cons to that. That it's obviously more complex. It's much harder to start. There's the list goes on, but the positives are kind of also the same as the negatives, right? It's tough to start. It's very complex. So it does have, once you get velocity and an install base of customers, it does have a really nice barrier to entry and moat around that business. And especially when you're verticalized, I think that, really kind of enhances that, the complexity of it.
Barrier to entry. I couldn't agree more. So how hard is it to get a DaaS model off the ground?
Hard. I'll be candid. It's a bear. It really is. It's incredibly challenging. Like I said, that's exactly what makes it such a strong, moat around the business, right? Like when I started the company, I knew that taking on a segment of the market that, I was trying to build a business around that was very, very opaque, with the private wealth space was going to be really difficult. And I felt like, a couple of things would make that, challenge worth it. One, being able to take, all this fragmented data and pull it into one central source and kind of mix technology and human capital to do that. And the other was I had an understanding of exactly what I would have wanted in my previous role. So a lot of that, building out the DaaS business, getting it off the ground was about kind of reverse engineering. If I could have, closed my eyes, waved a magic wand and said, hey, like if I could have a platform that had these 15 things in it and could do X, Y, and Z, like this would be gold. So I did have that advantage, but I would say, 30,000 feet, getting a DaaS business from scratch up and off the ground, especially the way that we did it, which was bootstrapped, is a tall task, but, really rewarding if you get it right. And I would also say, I guess kind of to finish that point is it probably takes a bit longer than kind of a standard SaaS business to get up and off the ground, even with all of the complexity of, and, power of AI today. I'm of the ilk that you can put, a handful of incredibly highly skilled engineers in a room, especially with the power of AI, and they can recreate anything in a short period of time. And that is being expedited, daily, it seems. That is not the case with getting a DaaS business off the ground.
Can you speak to the manual element of when you were just starting? Like, what are we talking here? Like fingers in the keyboard? Like, are you in file cabinets with dust on them? Like, how bad was it?
Bad. It was crazy. It was crazy. There was no looking back, no plan B. And so with that, there almost becomes a point of, no return and, desperation, right? So it was building out the product, designing what I wanted it to look like, spending a good portion of the day doing that, spending, 6-7 hours a day building out the data manually, building out the profiles, aggregating and, cleaning and sourcing data. And that was rinse and repeat for a while. And then I would say after about a year or so, I had it to the point where it's like a really, it was in an MVP state. This is probably 2015, 2016, something like that. And then the other half of the day, when not aggregating and curating and refining the data, was, cold calling asset managers and saying, hey, like I've got this thing. This is what I'm trying to build. You're interested in taking a look at it. And it was just kind of back and forth to that motion. But, in that process, I think, you learn a lot. You learn a lot about how to do a little bit of everything. And most, if not all of those things, I had absolutely no idea how to do. I still don't know how to do many of them, but you learn how to do them well enough to get it done. And like I said, when you've made your mind up, or at least when I've made my mind up that I'm going to do something, it's just like, you got to figure it out. There's just no other way to go about it.
We had spoken to Nigel Glenday, who's the CFO at Masterworks. And so they allow people to buy fractional shares in like very rare artwork. And what he said about the artwork market is the data is out there, right? Like since the start of time, people have recorded what things have sold for. The problem is it's probably like in like a closet somewhere that's been collecting dust for like 30 years. And I imagine that there's this element of like, once I find the data, great, but now I have to turn it into a format that can be homogenized and actually useful.
Totally. Not just useful, but delivered in a way that your verticalized market or, your end user, whatever that market might be that, your business plays in, how they talk about it, how they use it, what they want to do with it, right? What is the vernacular that, industry standard for whatever that industry is, right? So that's a big piece of it as well that I think makes, verticalized data businesses that are tech enabled really, really valuable if whether it's the founder or the founding team or a contingency of people within that company really know and understand that particular vertical. And it's analogous to the example that we just chatted about. You take some really high quality engineers, put them in a room, they can recreate anything. from a technical standpoint, I could make an argument that you could take really high quality engineers and high quality data science, put them in a room. They can build anything, but not verticalized, because that's a different animal. If they don't know about that particular domain, it's a very, very challenging thing to do, and how to present the data and how it will be used, etc.
Maybe to drill into that, because there are wide business models like a Zoom Info, and then there are narrow ones like your company. How did you decide where to play? Because I imagine financial data, you're like, I could take this really broad if I wanted to.
So, I mean, a couple of things, right? So when you think about, more horizontal data businesses, a Zoom Info or something like that, they're great businesses, amazing companies. But for me, the fundamental decision kind of came down to, what is what is kind of the most valuable and unique business that I personally feel like I could help create and add value to as the founder. And that was like a deliberate decision that says like, hey, this is the area that I know. This is the pain point that I'm choosing. And, when you think about horizontal versus vertical data businesses, they're similar, but there's a few kind of key drivers that make those vertical businesses really, really valuable. And one is kind of the dynamics of the market, right? So in our case, it was private wealth. Like, that market was underserved. It was not getting, it's a big market. You can build a huge business in that space, but it was certainly underserved. And what was available with those broad based horizontal data products could not capture or deliver like what somebody in my seat, whether it was raising money for financial, for a fund or distributing a financial instrument or product, those horizontal businesses could not meet the need of the nuance and the complexity that I was looking for and what the market was looking for. There's also kind of a competitive advantage, I think, by being able to really narrowly focus on a specific domain or industry and not take a broad horizontal approach. Having kind of a specialized knowledge, I think that's super important. And also just, obviously like a value prop, right? Customers in our space, which is, trying to access private wealth and financial services, regardless of the industry, they want to work with a specialized, tech data vendor that knows that market, right? That is very surgical about how the data is aggregated, the quality of the data, that is presented in a way that makes sense to them. So, you take two of those or three of those things, add them all together. For me, it was a clear path to say, hey, like, verticalized businesses for me, what makes the most sense and what, excited me the most to build this business versus a horizontal data company.
And those customers want to like work with somebody who's waking up every single day to solve this problem. Like, it's very hard to be everything to everyone. If you do that, you're really, no one.
Totally. Yeah. You kind of have to be, it's well said, you have to be kind of obsessed with it. You have to be in the trenches. And obviously the company has really grown and changed over time. And I'm no longer building out the data myself. We have 155 people within the company today. So some of the responsibilities for me personally have evolved and changed, but the kind of obsession with solving problems for the customer, being maniacal about the accuracy of the data, the uniqueness of the data, the historical components of the data, and showing and building trends over time, and then delivering that data not only in a really aesthetically pleasing way, but in a way that allows the end user to digest it in a manner that's very easy for them. So for some of our customers, that's via the web-based platform. For other customers, they're always active in the browser extensions and in the mobile app. For other customers, that's through Salesforce or Snowflake or data feeds of other delivery mechanisms. So you've got to be obsessed with it, and solving problems for the end user is really what it comes down to and what it's all about.
Man, that's said so well. It's like you have to meet the customer where they want to transact. And I don't mean transact like give you money. I mean, like, where do they want to digest the data? How did you hone in on your ICP, your ideal customer profile?
Here's what I'd say to that. As a bootstrap business, in the early days, we would really, we would take all kinds of customers. We really would, right?
Any warm body with a credit card, you can give us your money.
If it was green, we'd take it. And that evolves, right? It evolves over time, building out that ideal customer profile. what makes a great FINTRX customer, what's an average customer, like this is not a great fit. They're not going to be overly happy. We're not going to be overly happy. That takes time. It takes market engagement. It takes analysis of your install base. And most importantly for us, it was really about segmentation of our customer base, right? So initially very wide net. Over time it gets tighter, and we spent a tremendous amount of time and effort and resources segmenting the customer base. But the way that we have gone about it, I think, might be a little bit different. And so we've done it all, we still do it by size and enterprise down to SMB, et cetera. But for us, what we've really found to be interesting is that the use cases kind of roll up to these like 3 or 4 buckets. So you have, the ideal customer profile in this like asset raising cohort, so fundraising cohort, and that might be fund managers, typically, mainly alternative asset managers, the traditional managers as well. But that tends to present with hedge funds and private equity funds and real estate funds and VC firms, credit funds, etc. It's a big market, and their sole objective is to raise money for their fund structure. Then you have kind of that second cohort, which is even a bigger market, which is around product distribution. And that might be mutual funds. It might be ETFs, really, distributing out any financial instrument. That's super, super valuable as an ICP for us. And then you have this kind of recruiting advisor M&A world, which is exploding. And then you've got the investment banks that are looking to really kind of find whether it's family offices that have done other direct deals, things like that, right? So when we really started to learn, okay, not just what does a general ICP look like for us, but within that, what's layer 2? And that's around these use cases. And that has opened up a whole new world for us because it's done a number of amazing things for us. One, it allows us to be very mindful of our product roadmap, and we build out specific features and data points based on these particular ICPs. It's allowed us to develop our data aggregation mechanisms easier and with more precision, because we now know exactly what specific ICPs are looking for with particular data points that might be very different from, someone who's raising money for a hedge fund might be looking, for these 3 particular data points that somebody who's distributing an ETF could care less about, and vice versa. If you're distributing an ETF, you might want to know which independent advisors hold competitive tickers to our ETF funds that, have grown those tickers by X% in the last 6 months, so on and so forth. Somebody who's raising money for a VC fund could care less about that, right? So it's really helped us build our roadmap and also be more precise and thoughtful about the data, both historically and current, that we aggregate. So that's how we approach ICP, not generally, but kind of that second layer down.
What struck me hearing you describe your ICPs is I bet a lot of that data is shared. It's just maybe in a different workflow for each of them, or presented in a slightly different way. But there probably are tidbits that are unique to what they need. So what's your approach to like rolling your own data versus partnering with others to try to get it in like a faster way?
Yeah. To your previous point, there's a tremendous amount of crossover, right? With data points that are helpful for one or the other, relationship mapping, things like that, warm introductions, meeting prep, AI, things like that.
So how do you decide whether to go out and find the data yourself and like make it primary source data from like scratch versus partnering with somebody? Because I'd imagine sometimes it's pretty alluring to say, oh, just strike up a partnership and I have it all on day one, but it may have worse economics in the long run. And this is just me thinking about it out loud of like how I would go about getting data.
Yeah. If you were to start a data business tomorrow, hypothetically, I would say it is critical that either all or at least at a bare minimum, the core meat of your offering is homegrown and not outsourced or licensed or white labeled or third party. I feel very strongly about that. That was a kind of a strategic decision that was made early on here. And I think it's really led to us building something that's fundamentally different than what the market had previously seen, right? So of course there are situations and there is a world where you can license a bunch of different data sources and put them together in a way that is unique and different. But I think if you want to really be fundamentally unique, building your own data asset is really important. And that also gives you a myriad of other advantages. One, like things around like quality control, ensuring consistency around the data, right? And as you start to go up market, that becomes really, really important. And it becomes even more important when you go up market and start disseminating your data out into external CRM systems, right? So we work with some incredibly large asset managers. Our data is fed into their tech stack, into their CRMs, et cetera. And that data needs to have a tremendous amount of consistency, and you lose the ability to control that when that data is licensed from the outside. And there's so many other things too. Like you want to be nimble, you want to be fast and quick with, changes that you might want to make to the data or how it's presented, or, if you want to go about, gathering a specific data point in a different way than you did prior based on customer feedback, you can't do that because you don't own the data and you don't own the aggregation, right? So it just allows for, all of that. And, probably most importantly, it allows you to store it historically, which for us is a huge competitive advantage that, we have this incredibly large corpus of historical data that we can constantly compare, create indices, all these things that otherwise, if you're just ingesting the data kind of as it comes from a third party, you do not have the liberty or the advantage to do any of those things if it's externally sourced.
Ross, that was such a brilliant breakdown because my simple mind just went to like the economics of like owning the data. You can make more money off of it. But to your point, like data integrity, flexibility, historical track record, like you lose all those things if it's not yours and you just partner with somebody.
Yeah, totally. And, you find yourself in situations where if you're ingesting data from a third party, and that's kind of the base of the business, and then you see this pattern or you have an idea or you're like, hey, if we could go out and get X, Y, and Z, this could be an incredibly valuable 3 data points. We could put them together and make these 2 additional points, right? But if you don't have the chops, whether it's engineering wise or data science team to go out and aggregate, organize, pipeline that data, because the model is to ingest it from third party sources. It's hard to be really unique and it's hard to be differentiated. So that was why it's tempting to kind of go out and get to market quicker. And obviously there's always a balance there. But if I were to advise you, which I'm not sure if you would want to take my advice, but that would be what I would tell you.
Well, I do need some advice. So let's say I'm starting a company that deals with data, and I'm not technical, right? Like I can slam a couple of things together in Excel, do some pretty VLOOKUPs, maybe an index match, but I'm like, I'm over my head. I need some technical resources here. I heard you say engineering and data science. What type of people do you hire? Are those 2 different profiles fundamentally?
Interesting question. So typically, yes, absolutely. Gone about it a little bit differently. So our approach to data science is a little bit different. So we take and have built a team that combines kind of the traditional data science expertise with industry and kind of domain knowledge. And I would say, I think today we probably have 6 or 7 non-engineering focused data scientists, and then we have 13 full-time engineers, and the vast majority of them are also data scientists, and if not, have jobs. Our engineering team is absolutely incredible. They're a weapon, and so we feel that because of the uniqueness of our business, right? Like we talked about before, we're this combination of tech and data, that if our engineering team doesn't understand the flow of a 13F filing and how the ETFs, funnel down through pipelines and how to clean and slot that data, and the difference between a broker dealer and an independent advisor and how they file and all of these things, right? Like, and what a brochure form ADV is and all the nuance there, not that helpful, right? So we've really taken the time to develop and build out our data science team and our engineering team. A lot of crossover, but both segments of those teams, they understand the industry, they understand the domain that we play in, they understand the vernacular and how it's used. And that just makes us able to develop so much faster. I think that's part of the reason that we ship so much product and that we move so fast and that we've been able to make up the ground on a couple of these older legacy products in our space as we have, just due to the fact that we don't have this layer of friction of you have one team that knows what they're doing from a technical standpoint, you have another team that knows what they want or what they're doing from a data standpoint, and there's this kind of friction there and knowledge gap, right? They really try to meet, and so that's been very important, and we keep that in mind for every engineering hire, data scientist hire that we bring in. They're not just doing the task; they're doing the task and building whatever they're building or shipping whatever they're shipping, but they know why they're doing it, and that's not specific to us in terms of how we go about that, right? Like if you were building a verticalized software data business in, I don't know, the manufacturing space, like those engineers and those data scientists that are building out and coordinating those data assets, they really need to know that particular vertical. And I think that can go sideways if that's not the case.
And I think that's exactly what I'm poking at here. Like if you want to create a data business in a verticalized space, is that going to be a different profile than an engineer who's going to build a productivity tool or a cybersecurity tool?
In my opinion, categorically, yes. Very different profile. A much harder to find profile and a much more talented person, in that seat, in my opinion, is what it takes to do that. And so, I mean, we're engineering heavy, right? Like 13 plus, we may have 14 now. Just on the engineering side that's a lot of engineers for a company for what we do, but we take the tech piece both on the aggregation, cleaning, organization of the data, as well as our front end UI and what we deliver to our customers incredibly seriously. And we, I'm very passionate about the product. It's something I still oversee today. It's my baby. And for me, we will never, ever be just a pure static data delivery company, right? Like just feeding our data into external systems. That will always be a big piece of what we do. But there's just so much value in delivering data through a really easy to understand and use UI that the end user really appreciates. And then secondly, you can do so much with that data to make it human, to make it very smart, to make it personalized to each end user, to make it customized to their network and their background, and provide introduction opportunities. Or we do a lot with AI that says, hey, like you've been looking at these types of profiles and you're interacting with this type of data, we think you might find this interesting, right? You can't do that when you're just delivering the data out on a pure data play. So our engineers know and they understand all of those things, and it takes a very, very unique and talented person to do that.
Russ, there was a revenue estimate that came out for both OpenAI and Anthropic, and what was fascinating about it is it broke it down by mix between like the core tool, like the OpenAI chatbot versus APIs. And OpenAI, 80% of the revenue is coming from people paying like $20 a month or whatever they're charging these days to use their software, their pane of glass. 20% is coming from APIs. Anthropic is the exact opposite. It's 20% from their web-based tool, 80% from APIs. Do you run into like this conundrum sometimes of like, do I want them in my workspace, my cloud-based tool, versus they just want the data and they want to pipe it into something else and mix it up with whatever else they got going on?
Yeah, it's kind of a constant push and pull, right? We found a really nice happy medium for that problem. And what we've done is, when you're in the UI and you're integrated, so if you're a user in our platform and you're in our interface, but you also have your data, our data sent to, your Salesforce or your HubSpot or Snowflake or whatever it might be, there's a constant connection there. You can constantly click over on a record into the CRM and vice versa. So when you're in HubSpot or Salesforce, there's always something there that says like view additional intel in FINTRX or view record in FINTRX, and that will kind of bring you back. So it's interesting. We used to feel before we built out and put all this time and resources into building, our integration portal, that if we moved people outside of the UI and solely into the integration, then no one's ever going to use the product, right? No one's ever going to use the platform, and we kind of lose control of that delivery. But what we found was the exact opposite. The more integrated customers we had, the more they used the UI, because wherever they were, if they're in our product, they're obviously in our product. But if they're in their CRM, our name and logo and, view in FINTRX is always right in front of them. And when they're in the browser, the extension's always right there. So we found the usage to spike dramatically when a customer is integrated. It's really counterintuitive. You would think it would
That
be
is super
the opposite.
counterintuitive.
Yeah. And it's also interesting too. It's like, that there's that side of the push and pull. And then the other side of the push and pull is you get, as you start to go, mid-market and up, you get into these large, name the large financial firm, right? And the users, the ETF distribution teams, 100 people, they want to use the platform. The folks overseeing that team and the data people at, whatever, name the financial firm, and I would speak out of school, but they would much rather have everybody just working out of the CRM, everything in one place, right? So there's that kind of internal dynamic as well. So we solved for that by allowing kind of, linkage back and forth.
We were trying to sell a data product to a large auto supplier at my last company. And we'd built this beautiful dashboard. And I remember the guy said, no, I just want to pipe this into my Power BI. And we're like, well, shit.
Right.
Okay. And then we were like, well, he wants to give us money, but then we're going to kind of be out of sight, out of mind. So like, how do we bridge the gap?
Yeah, we found that that's the best way to do it. And it's a fair point of contention. Like it's fair. Your thought process there was right. My take on it is if your product is strong enough, a joy to use, feels natural, easy, is delivering value, you can do so much more and deliver so much more to the end user in that UI than you ever could trying to like circumvent what Salesforce allows you to do and try to build that. Like it's just, you just can't do it. Right. So if your product is good enough, the end user will always find his way back there. Yeah. That's my take on it.
And you kind of teed me up for it because you have mentioned the importance of being part of a customer's daily workflow. And I've heard that term all the time with like investors. You sit down with them, they're like, oh, security product. Are you in like the IDC or like, are you part of this developer's workflow day to day? What does that look like in practice? Does it mean like they just log in to get whatever shit they need done that day? Is that what being in a workflow is?
No, I think it depends a lot on what that shit they're trying to get done is, okay, and what they, what they're trying to accomplish, right? So, somebody who's raising money for a fund might have a very different usage pattern and workflow than somebody who, is recruiting for, advisors, which is a different work pattern than someone who's doing, advisor M&A roll-ups versus someone who's distributing ETF products, right? Like they're all very different. What's critical, in my opinion, and what's critical to our success is just being in that workflow and bringing our data to where our end user is, wherever that might be, right? So, some of our users are just nonstop on their iPad and their iPhone, and that's where they consume our product. That's considered, we consider that, workflow fit, right? Same thing in the browser, same thing in the web app, same thing in their CRM. The list goes on. So for me, that's kind of what I consider workflow fit. And those customers are incredibly retentive. And
that's what I was getting at, because if you're in their workflow, they're going to retain a lot better.
Totally. Right. So you're seamlessly built into their CRM or their mobile or wherever they're using or digesting, the intelligence. That is just, it's vital. And there's, for me, as we think more about, bringing the data to where the customer works. I mean, we're working on some stuff right now. I don't want to get too far with the disclosure of what we're building, but with some of the tech that we now have available to us, we want to be able to have our data honestly accessible wherever and whenever the client needs it. That might be in their email. It might be via text. It might be, hey, like they just want to punch something in and like, hey, this is what I need. Sends it to them 10 minutes later via email. They take it offline, meeting prep, like whatever it is and however they want to consume it. We know that we've got the best data when it comes to family offices, wirehouses, independent investment advisors, and wealth teams in the world. We don't want to pigeonhole the end user to say like, hey, you can only take it this particular way. You can only digest it that particular way. It's not what we're trying to do. As much as I would love everybody in the UI at all times, we want to make sure that they can get it when they need to. And that secondly, that we can deliver timely information that's time sensitive when they need it, right? So like in practice, we do a lot with predictive stuff. So it might be like a news alert, or, we think that this might happen based on these events, or, hey, like in your territory, here are 4 of your main targets were mentioned in the news in the past 2 days. Here they are, and here's a snippet on the article. Like, that's proactive delivery of that information. So we want to make sure we can get that information to them however they want to take it.
So well said, because there are analysts at the bottom of a firm who need to do all sorts of gymnastics with data. But then there's also a fund manager somewhere in the world who literally only checks his iPad, right? Like he doesn't open a PC each day. And each one of those people still need the data.
Totally. And then you've got, you have folks that are like on IR teams and asset raising teams and these large alternative asset management firms, mid-sized asset management firms, and they're kind of doing a lot of that blocking and tackling. And then you have like this, call it product distribution, internal, external wholesaler motion, right? Like where you've got the external out and they're going meeting to meeting to meeting, and you got the internal doing all the prep work and teeing them up and organizing the list and prepping them. And the external, they don't want any part of that. They want their iPad, they want their phone, they want to get a quick prep. Okay, who am I meeting with next? Like, what are we talking about? When's the last time we talked to them? What's timely and topical for them? And then the internal is doing, pulling all those strings and gymnastics, doing that in the back end. So like they have one way that they want to use and consume the intel. The external has a way that they want to, consume and use the intel. So we want to be as pliable and open as we possibly can to deliver that.
Hearing you go through that just like underscores like how deeply you know your end consumer, that there are ICPs within your ICP.
Yeah, it's kind of embarrassing, but
it's awesome.
I'm passionate about it, and I genuinely feel I have a ton of conviction in what we're doing. I know what we're doing is very, very unique to the market, and we're delivering this data and our product in ways that has not been done before. And so, I'm very passionate about capitalizing on that and making sure that we can keep delivering value and having our customers say like, oh, I didn't even know this was a thing, or like, wow, I never even thought that we could, consume the data that way, or I didn't know that there was firms that had all this historical data that can say like, hey, this is a big change from how it looked 2.5 years ago. You should know about this, right? Like that kind of stuff is geeky and nerdy as it is. I find it, it gives me energy.
Russ, I'm going to take you into what we call our long ass lightning round. So for someone looking to launch a data as a service or vertical specific business, what's the one piece of advice you wish someone had told you at the start?
I would say that you have to be undeniably better, that, you have to be leaps and bounds better than what's out there when you are entering a data business or data intel tech business versus just another software business. And what I mean by that is, that piece of advice is like, hey, if you are going to ask a large financial firm who's been using X data provider for a wide number of years to upend that and move to your solution, you have to be night and day better, and it can't be slightly accretive. That would be the advice that I would give anybody who's starting a company in this space. It's like, if you don't feel as though either you and your ingenuity or your idea or you really have a better way to deliver something that is so far superior, it's going to be an incredibly uphill battle, because data is so different than just regular software that you have to be so precise with it, because you can really screw people up, right? It's not like, you hit, the undo button and you roll it back. It's like, no, man, you just delivered them all of this data. It's got to be right. It's got to be structured right and all these things. So that would be my piece of advice.
Yeah, especially if they're making financial decisions based on it.
Totally. Yep.
What's a tool or a habit that you swear by as a founder?
I would say use the early mornings, as a competitive advantage. For me, those, call it 2 hours every day that are free of distraction, are my best, most productive times. That is something that I swear by. It is something that, when you're younger or whatever, high school, college, I'm trying to sleep in all the time. But now it's like, sometimes I open my eyes, it's like 4:05 in the morning, and I just like, wow, if I can get to work in 40 minutes from now, I'll have almost 3 hours of just like silent time to think and do deep work, that's something for me that I swear by. And I would say over the past like 6 or 7 years has really become apparent to me, and also my favorite time of the day, just because, most of the big decisions or good ideas, maybe they're few and far between, but when they do happen, they tend to happen, at 5:15 at my desk and not at 2:45 in the afternoon when there's just like things are moving 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, nothing, how they say like nothing good happens after 10 p.m. Like for people going out in the town, like I say no good thought happens after 2 p.m. Like I'm pretty much like useless. Like I can do emails and I can do stuff that I planned on doing, but like no creativity is going to hit in the afternoon.
No shot. Yeah, I totally agree.
All right, last one I got for you. Can you share a moment when something didn't go as planned and what you learned from it?
Man, I could think of a lot of things. I would say when we were still really, really small, we were tiny. We were probably still like, I don't know, 3 or 4 million in annual revenue, something like that, small. We used to use at that time, this was way back, a like external bookkeeper, to a couple of them actually, to just like do our books and all this stuff. And they kept messing up and like, making errors. It was super frustrating. And, this gentleman, here is one of our, one of my first teammates. He and I at the time, Chris, Kylie, were like, you know what, we can do this. Like, I can do this. Like, this is not, what are we doing? Like, why are we using these guys? Like, we can do it. It's like the books. Like, how hard is it? Like we pay somebody, we have an expense, we slot it, we bring in a customer.
Bada bing, bada boom.
We send the invoice. Should be easy, right? And did we fumble that so hard? And after like 3 months, we were like, honest to God, what are we doing? We'd be holed up in the conference room on a Saturday trying to reconcile the books. And we were just like, no more. Like, this is absolute chaos. So again, that was in the early days, but I probably have about 100 things like that. And if there's mistakes to be made, I've made them.
Shout out to all the controllers holding it down.
Controllers, like guys like you.
Yeah.
Right.
Ross, this has been a pleasure having you on. And another shout out just to Andy, your neighbor from Virtual Research, and Chris Venti for hooking us up. He always seems to know the smart people.
He's the man. And much love to Andy. And thank you for having me. This has been, a really great chat and thoughtful questions. And I'm happy to do it again anytime.
Awesome. Hopefully we drive some customers your way. If not, you will have about 100 hungry BDRs hawking you, trying to sell their wares. So that's the curse of the podcast. But thanks for coming on.
I love it. Cheers. Thanks.
Run the Numbers is a mostly LLC production. Yelling an intro by Fat Joe. Artwork by some AI thingamajig. Podcast and video editing is done by Cleancast at cleancast.io. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of me, a guy who feeds his dog too much ice cream and has a history of net operating losses, LOL. If you like this podcast, please hit subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And also check out mostlymetrics.com. That's my newsletter where I explore business models and financial metrics. Thanks for riding with me. Share this with your friends. Peace.